show. This next case that I'm going to talk about, it takes us to Mississippi, to the Carroll County Courthouse, where there was a massacre that occurred March 17th, 1886. Okay. Now, you won't find this on the records of the Carroll County anything because little towns like that, they kind of, swept things under the rug and don't publicize some of the horrific things that happen. And I will tell you this is not publicized anywhere, but there is knowledge of it. Okay, so March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, 1886, there was a mass attack upon a group of African Americans in the courthouse room and on the courthouse grounds that left 10 dead and another 13 deaths resulting from wounds. Okay. Now you got to remember, back in them times, racism was pretty out there, pretty strong. The trouble began in January of 1886. There was these two brothers, and their names were Ed and Charlie Brown. Now, they were biracial. They were half black, half American Indians, and they were delivering molasses to a local saloon in Carrollton, which was the county seat. Well, they bumped into this man, and they spilled molasses on his clothing, and the man's name was Robert Moore. He was a white man, and he was said to be from Greenwood. Now, of course, as you can imagine, an argument ensued, and however, they did quickly resolve it, okay? But the matter did not end there. Like a month later, this Robert Moore fella, he told his friend James Monroe Little, who was a Carrollton attorney, and he also told a Greenwood newspaper editor about the incident, all right? Little would deal with the Browns on behalf of his friend. Little took it upon himself to deal with the Brown brothers when supposedly there should be no problem as they resolved their differences, but that wasn't the case. This Little did this on his own. On February 26th, 1886, this little guy, he approached the Brown brothers and was hurling accusations that the molasses was deliberately spilled on them, on his friend, right? And the argument quickly escalated, as you can imagine, back in those times. And before long, bullets were flying. To this day, it's not known who fired the first shot. However, the gun battle left all three men injured. They weren't killed at this point. After the run-in, the Browns decided to press charges against Little, accusing him of attempted murder. Now, the trial was set for March 17th, 1886, at the Carroll County Courthouse, right? On the day of the trial, both white and black citizens filled the courthouse. Shortly before the proceedings began, attendees got the scare of a lifetime when a group they're imagining between 50 and 100 armed men stormed the courthouse, firing a barrage of bullets on the Brown brothers as well as the black citizens who were in attendance. Now, beyond frightened, some of these people, they tried to escape, okay? Several people resorted to jumping out the second-story window, only to be shot once they hit the ground. The murderous mob rode out of town as quickly as they had rode in, and the surprise attack left 10 dead. Another 13 would later die because of their injuries. Now, surprisingly enough, and as you can imagine, back in this time period, no investigation ever came about. Mississippi Governor Robert Lowry said that the riot was provoked. And get this, folks, the bullet holes in the walls of the courthouse were finally covered during a 1990 renovation. So they left those bullet holes in the walls for decades. With such a tragic event that happened, you can imagine the slew of reports of hauntings at this courthouse, I'm sure. Phantom gunshots have been reported, as well as disembodied voices and screams, reports of hearing footsteps, doors opening and closing on their own, and unexplained flashes of light. And there have been a few reports of apparitions who they think are the men who were gunned down on this tragic day. Spooky, spooky, spooky. And I can believe that this place is probably absolutely, truly haunted. Now, let's travel. You know how I like to travel, folks. Eventually, I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to go to all of these places I talk about. Let's travel to Ireland. Let's explore some of St. Patrick's Day hauntings in Ireland. What I found quite interesting is that there's this weekly Irish newspaper back in 1888 published some spooky ghost stories on his front cover page. Isn't that amazing for that time period? And one of those stories, of course, was about a woman in white, okay? Local legend and lores many times offer a ghost story of a woman in white. She is so popular. She's seen everywhere, folks, everywhere. Since she's seen in Ireland too. So how this story goes is, it seems as though there was this fellow named Pat, and he was driving towards Dublin with a load of country produce in his cart, because, you know, he had a horse-drawn cart back then during this time. Now, he got startled when he seen this apparition of a woman dressed in a long white gown crossing and advancing into the roadway. Now, she came up to the horse and she walked with him close by the neck of the horse. And Pat was afraid that this horse would either step on her feet or her long robe. But no matter what Pat did to try to get the horse to nudge over a little bit, this woman stayed right up real close to the horse. So, of course, Pat couldn't keep his eyes off the apparition, this lady in white, and he felt his whole body covered in cold perspiration. He couldn't make a decision whether he should keep going or whether he should stop, so he kept going. So when Pat got to the center of this crossroad, the lady in white stood still while he kept moving, and what he noticed was part of his cart, it passed right through her. And of course, he was very frightened by this. And actually, over the years, clear up into today, people report seeing this woman in white. And as you can imagine, they see this woman in white every darn where. Now, this next case is about the Carlington Rectory. And it is County Louth. And it was built in the 17th century. And one of the first owners was the Stannis family. It was bought around 1870 by the Church of Ireland to be used as the local rector. Now, in 1960, this 22-room house had been bought from the church by a painter. Oh, how interesting. And that's the kind of picture you would think of too, a painter having a big countryside house to do his quiet work. Okay, so this painter, his name was Ernest McDowell. And one hot September evening, McDowell and his brother were at the house. McDowell was mowing the lawn while his brother worked in the nearby field. Okay, glancing up, McDowell spied a girl in a red velvet dress moving towards the front door, and before he could see her face, she disappeared. He recognized that dress as it being of the Edwardian time period. So, looking around, McDowell spotted a gentleman entering the gate there to the house, wearing the high stiff collar of an Edwardian clergyman. But as soon as he tried to get a good look, he too disappeared. Now, of course, McDowell was convinced that this couldn't be a coincidence and the two visions must be connected. So, McDowell decided to dig deeper, and records show that an earlier resident by the name of Canon Messner had witnessed the girl in red inside the house also. His wife and daughter had heard footsteps on the back stairs when no one else was in the house. And the daughter was also in her bedroom one day when she saw the door start to vibrate, and so violently to the point where the door just burst open. And when it did, there was no one there. And the girl's dog stared at the doorway, and the girl's dog turned and fled. It was just scared. So, Ernest Dowell was himself no stranger to psychic abilities and had heard footsteps in the house himself, although he did not sense any sadness from the spirits themselves. In 1965, there was this ghost hunter, and this ghost hunter actually tracked down a previous family and verified that they saw some of the same things that McDowell seen. He went on also to verify that the two figures were seen connected, that there had been a romantic tragedy in the mid-19th century involving the girl in the red dress and the clergyman, which obviously, made both of their spirits tied to the house. So very interesting. A ghostly, tragic love story, right? So, there was probably more stuff surrounding, but I couldn't find information on the tragic happening of it, which I wish I could have. But records from that far back, you can only dig so deep, right? Now, this next one is in Selbridge, and there stands a beautiful, stately house which was built by William Conley, who was the Speaker of the Irish Parliament in 1722. Connolly has also built the infamous Hellfire Club, which was also cursed from the beginning. After the death of Connolly in 1729, his widow, Catherine, she continued to live there in the house, hosting extravagant parties, and she became quite famous for her hospitality. So after her death in 1752, the house passed to their nephew, William James Connolly, and he was married to Lady Anne Wentworth, who was the daughter of the Earl of Stafford. It was to her that this gentleman in question first appeared, okay, folks? On the day she happened to see the fella in question, she saw this strange, tall man standing in the upper gallery. He proceeded to walk down a non-existent staircase, taking tiny steps as though the stair steps were very small. He paused by a large window, and he started to laugh, a high, mocking, cruel, arrogant laugh that sent